It's been quite a while since I've brought you up to date on all my activities, and so now let's talk about the last 6 months. In March, I presented a talk on biotensegrity and piano technique at the MTNA conference in Spokane, Washington, and that was pretty well received. I had a lot of fun because I actually brought a bunch of tensegrity models and had people handle them and feel how when you pull on one element, all the elements expand. It's not like a balloon where if you squeeze on one part of the balloon, the other part expands. If you squeeze this thing, the whole thing compresses and the whole thing expands when you pull on any two elements. So it's like the lungs, which also do that, and it's also like the hand, which grows into its arch structure with all elements equally attaining to an elastic tensile strength. I'm continually looking for new formulations because I want as many people as possible to benefit from these ideas. So this one was pretty successful, and you can find that at pt.org. So I'd love to hear back from you about that because biotensegrity is a very new idea and it's not that easy to wrap your head around it. But this way I talked a lot about other things besides piano, and then linked it into piano technique at the end and to sound, because of course we're doing all this in order to create a richer palette of possible sounds coming out of the instrument. The following month I gave institutes in Dijon, and then one of the most interesting institutes I gave was in Stuttgart, where I worked with many of the students at the Stuttgart Hochschule, which is the university level conservatory in Stuttgart. I had a lot of really great talents, and I was able to work with them in an interesting way to show how these ideas are not just for remedial work, but can open up an artistic vision. I just did a technique tips on the Chopin etudes, including the harp etude, and I had, what I like to do as a harp etude is actually have the student hold the keys of an A flat major chord down silently, and then I blow on the strings, and you hear this very, very faint sound of an A flat major harmony. I see, that's the Aeolian harp. I had this really gifted student there actually achieve that sound with her fingers. It was extraordinary. I was crying. It blew me away. And we worked hard to get it. Because you have to differentiate the hand way more than you used to. But she went for it and got it. Two of the most interesting lessons in that Stuttgart Institute were given to non-pianists. And they were kind of, I'm a violinist or something, and well, actually, it's just about standing the hand up and the simple stuff that I do at the beginning. And Lily Bogdanov, who's one of my advanced students and who helped arrange that workshop, she said that of all the lessons she saw, they were perhaps the most informative for her. So that's kind of interesting that a really advanced pianist can learn from seeing how these ideas are applied to relatively unadvanced pianists. That was a really nice moment. Then in UMass, the institute there, the flagship institute, we had a lovely group. Again, it's a mixture of amateurs and professionals. And I'm deeply moved to see how more and more my so-called physical ideas about physical organization are manifesting deeper and more meaningful artistic interpretations, and in the end, a deeper emotion. It's really like when our technique is off, when there's a block anywhere in the system, somehow it blocks the musical flow and the emotional flow, and somehow when you have complete structural connection with no impediment to movement, then it's a breath rhythm, it's a breath movement, and it's not weak. The structural connections give it its contour, the structural connections give it its richness of color, and the continuous movement gives it flow and emotional depth. This happened big time in that institute with certain of my students. And so it was very rewarding for me to be in a situation where I can share this work with this kind of pianist. That was special. And then, oh no, Montreal actually didn't happen in the summertime. That happened back in March as well, early April. Angela Chan is a former student of Phil Cohen. She's actually worked with Phil for more years than me. And she's now established a school called the Lambda School of Fine Arts and Creative, I forget exactly. And she asks herself the question, what makes a prodigy? Why is this person a prodigy and all the rest of his art? Can this be reproduced? And she started taking Phil's ideas, using them with young people to produce prodigies on a regular basis. Did I talk about this last time? If I did, you can leave it out. Did I talk about this little kid who was playing the Chopin movement from Schumann's Carnival? And I told her, you have to orchestrate a little bit more, like not so much left-hand accompaniment, a little more richness in the singing right hand. And I said, that really works well, especially in a larger hall. Have you ever played in a larger hall than this one? She says, well, I've played in Carnegie Hall. And she's 7 years old. We all broke up. But it's true, she has. Angela produces such high-level kids that they regularly win competitions, and the prize is a performance in Carnegie Hall. So they've got pictures from every year of all the kids who've gone down there to play. And we've now established the Lambda School as an affiliate of the Alan Fraser Piano Institute. And I'm going to be working regularly there a couple of times a year with that group, which I'm very excited about because they're so talented and she's done such great work with them. Now, after that was my holiday. And in terms of my injury, I'm still not healed. I'm learning a lot. And the retraining of the shoulder area especially, not only the hand, there are many, many levels to it. So the neuromotor system adapts to the retraining gradually. One of the most interesting things that happened this summer, I'm still not playing with my left hand. I can play slowly and practice and learn certain notes, but in terms of playing at speed, anything like Mephisto Waltz, there's no way as of yet. There's still tingling when I type and use the mouse on the computer. It's very, very slow, but there is progress. And I've been swimming, and it's, if you do the crawl, you have to look up like this to look ahead of yourself, creating a cramp in the neck. So I started crawling and just looking towards my feet and turning my head this way and turning my head that way. And all of a sudden, I feel the shoulder is engaged in the stroke. And the shoulder is engaged in the stroke. And when one shoulder engages in a stroke, I could feel it going through the neck into the other shoulder, so that there's this X, one arm of the X, and the other arm of the X, and the other arm of the X. And that all happened big time when the neck found its true neutral. And that was a totally new experience for me. So I found it fairly early on in my summer vacation and swam virtually every day across the bay and back. So it's like a kilometer. And just experimenting with this sensation of the shoulders communicating with each other through a neutral neck, and the head turning to breathe in such a way that the turning went all the way down through C7 and into the thoracic vertebrae. So even when I demonstrate it, I can do it in a way where I feel, if I keep this up, there was, the x-rays showed a little dystonia and then the 4 herniated discs, and that pattern, that deformation, I'm feeling, if I keep this up, that can't hold. It's got to resolve itself, and the spine's got to straighten itself out. So my goal is to take another MRI 2 years after I did the first one, so that'll be next February, and see whether I've actually succeeded in resolving not only the herniated discs, but the dystonia, which was right underneath them. I feel that it's changed, but I feel that Now there's a struggle between the old habit and the new habit, and there are many old habits and many new habits, and so you feel weird a lot of the time, and you have to remember to do it all the time. I'd love to be at the point where I don't have to think about this anymore. The new pattern has simply installed itself as that's me. My Tai Chi teacher, Sam Slutsky, congratulated me as soon as he saw me this summer. Before we'd even worked together, he just felt that I was more open and the chest had really changed. So that's, from doing a lot of Feldenkrais as well as Tai Chi. So there's lots of progress. I've changed the way I teach a great deal. I've changed the way I do FI, give private Feldenkrais lessons based on all the learnings. So it's very rich, and there's also an element of when am I not going to be just improved? When am I going to be 100%? And that still remains an unknown. Now, I've got some institutes coming up in the fall. There's Dijon, September 14th to 17th. That's in France, and that's a bilingual institute, and you're all welcome to that. Overfane is in November. Wusum, the Feldenkrais Institute, is relatively late in October this year, and that's the one where I do several Feldenkrais lessons a day and intersperse them with not only piano lessons, but violin lessons, voice lessons, other instrument lessons. And that's a really rich weekend in each year as I develop new ways of bringing the ideas of Feldenkrais to musical performance. And then I've got New York City. Selena Hochstein has graciously agreed to organize 2 weekends in New York City, and so we're looking forward very much to those in early December, where we will be bringing these ideas to a very eclectic New York crowd. And we're very excited about that, so I'll bring you news of that when it's happened. But you're all invited to come, of course. I have an article just published in the Feldenkrais Research Journal of the United Kingdom. It's actually an excerpt from my book, Play the Piano with Your Whole Self, which is still not published, and I'm just about at the point where I'm deciding to self-publish. So you may not have to wait much longer for that one, but this chapter really illustrates in a unique way how the ideas of Feldenkrais can be brought to bear on piano technique. And I prefaced the chapter and with some explanatory material afterwards. So that's a nice thing. If you look up Feldenkrais Research Journal UK, Volume 6, you should be able to find it online. Now, my basic goal is still that you don't need me anymore, that you can really play well under your own steam. So I'm always looking for new formulations, and I'm always looking for feedback, what works, what doesn't work. Today I taught a lesson to Ramon Holzbergen in Amsterdam, and it was the closest we've come. He's a very gifted pianist. He's almost done too much Feldenkrais, so he's so differentiated that he finds it difficult to just play. He's always focused on the ribs or the shoulder or the gut or the sitting or the finger or the arm. And somehow you have to go through this differentiation, but you also have to get back to simply playing and using your ear. So today it was like, if I play a chord, there's a moment when I solidify the chord, and then there's a block in the musical line. So it's this conundrum. We have this structure. I spent so much time talking about the arch structure of the hand. That arch must be in constant movement. It is never like a cathedral, although it resembles a cathedral in its structural power. Even if I create a bird beak, I will slide through the key or slide back on the key or angle the bird beak. If I play with a finger, that structure is always moving. That hip joint of the hand is always rising, or it may be lying down, or it may be angling into a pronation, or it may be angling into a supination, or any combination of those, but the structure is never weak. The structure is always totally connected without losing one iota of movability. The movability must remain at 100% for there to be no block through the physical system and no block to the music. So we were working on a really simple piece, Clair de Lune by Debussy, but it was a profound opening when all these tiny, almost imperceptible structural conformations which were blocking the line, when they melted away and he could just use every action of moving the key to create a continuous inner movement. It was, he already had wonderful sonority, but it was even better because now every rich sonority that he produced was filled with this kind of breath aura, this kind of glowing, flowing quality, which was even more beautiful and which touched the emotions in a deeper way. So what we're getting at is total movability, which is not a relaxation, it's not a collapse. It's a use of the structure either to create an art structure or to use rope-like fingers and dragging them through the keys and then using little tiny movements inside the finger to move the key. There are so many different ways which need to be known and which need to be applied to different technical challenges and musical configurations, but the common factor going through it all is this movability and structural connection happening simultaneously. Two seemingly contradictory qualities which must coexist for really artistic piano playing to happen. So just go to the piano and try out what I've been talking about in any piece you're playing and see if you can figure it out and if you can alter your sound, transform your sound by following these principles.